Welcome to episode 6 of Pure Derry Talks. It's hard to believe that it has been 2 years now, almost exactly, since the tragic death and indeed murder of Lyra McKee in Creggan. I was somewhat acquainted. I knew her in a capacity that many knew her as a tech entrepreneur, as a journalist, and as just a social butterfly and just an amazing person that got to meet and know lots and lots of people across the country. But my guest tonight is someone who met her and fell in love, and unfortunately and tragically had to watch her lose her life that fateful night in Creggan. And that is, of course, the wonderful Sara Canning. Sara and I didn't know each other prior to Lyra's death. I think she was aware of some of the work I was doing, and I had heard all about her through Lyra. And I was, I suppose, blown away by not only how she spoke at all the events surrounding that in the news, but also just how eloquently she put her message across at the most awful time in her life. I've got to know Sara a little bit over the last couple of years. I've stayed in touch with her, and when I decided to do a podcast, she was one of the first people that I wanted to speak to. And she's just a great person, and we talk about the tragedy of grief, and we talk about the awkward, I suppose, room for growth there is in coming to terms with loss in your life, and many other things as well. I hope you enjoy this episode. It is possibly my favourite to date. This is Life, Loss, Love and Lyra with Sara Canning.
Hello.
Hey, what's the crack?
Not a while out. What about
I'm all
yourself?
good. You have a new hairdo?
I had a wee bit of lockdown madness. Just I'd always wanted to do it, and I'd always been afraid to, because my hair's well thin and crap, basically, and it had looked the same for years. So I was just like, you know what, get rid of what's there and start again from the start.
I'm pretty close to doing that myself. Actually, I have over lockdown. Just and my hair's already getting pretty thin on top as well. It's more this sort of receding bit that's happening now, where I'm just like, it's almost time now
Uh,
to just go for just the number 6 all over or whatever, and just like stop trying to like quaff it and do this whole thing that I do. Because it's just, I don't know,
well, that's kind of
age.
what I had been going for. My
Oh,
plan was only do like a number 6 all over, and then if you want to go shorter, you can. But I misjudged the yard, and I did like a 1.5 all over instead. So it was like, fuck it, just go for it.
so
Whatevs.
you just went for an accidental
Aye.
skinhead then.
Pretty much.
It's easy done.
Ready to infiltrate a gang, a Nazi gang.
Yeah, no. I've sort of realised instead of making a whole big song and dance about doing like a whole question and answer sort of thing, but just make it about a conversation. It took me about 4 episodes to get that thing to be like, I'm going to start now, right? Are you ready? Are
Structure.
you ready? I'm ready, right? Okay. And then I realised I was doing it one day, and I was like, Kane, you're not Mark Patterson. You're not the BBC. You're having a you're having a conversation with people on the internet. Just chill. Your boot's sick. But it's so different.
That's it. And like, you can edit it as well, so it makes it so much easier.
It really does. The editing process is my saving grace. I have to say. Oh, there's your cat.
Tiger wants to be a part of it too.
Well,
Tiger.
you know what? I did think about bringing my cat into the frame literally. But he just runs about, and he's got a wee bell on his thing,
Oh,
and he just jangles about the house.
he's jealous of the laptop, so he's looking at the laptop on my lap, and he wants to be where the laptop is. So that's what he's going to try and do now. And I'm going to say, no, go away, go away, lie over there. He is not happy with me
Is
at
it
all
not?
now. Sitting.
So how are you? How's things?
Um, I don't even
And,
know at the minute.
I know that, and that's what I want you to be as honest as that. Don't be giving me the whole.
Um,
Don't be giving me the whole. "Aye, they're on. Hey, brilliant!" Like, but
uh,
how are you doing? Are you working at the minute? Are you?
I was off work there for a while. I think it was just a mixture of my mental health took a nosedive, and I think I had COVID last year,
Right.
so my physical health took a real nosedive. And it just all came to a head in September, and I thought I was dying. I felt awful. I couldn't function. So it took me a fair wee while to get myself back on the way of working where I could actually do stuff
Uh,
and have energy to do anything. Like I was really in such a bad state for a while.
mm,
So I've gone back to work. We're working on a COVID study at the minute, which is really, really interesting. So it's kind of it's nice. I'm seeing patients. I'm back sort of at the stuff that I enjoy,
right.
but I'm only doing a 3 day week and it is absolutely killing me.
Really. So it's three.
Mm.
And so 3 days is a strenuous effort. And are you finding
Yeah.
your difficulty breathing? Are you lethargic? Are you tired? Do you,
I am constantly tired. Like if I'm not at work, I'm pretty much asleep.
yeah,
Most of the time. It's not hard to breathe, but chest pain, a lot of chest pain, which has been ongoing for months, and like nearly feels like my lungs. You know when you breathe in like hot steam or something, you scald your lungs. It feels like that most of the time.
that would probably mount up to what any sort of research. I'm reluctant to use the word research about COVID because it's watching things on the internet like everybody else, but
Mm.
it is I've seen a lot of stuff online, and it's this kind of
Hmm.
idea of you like breathing in like particles of glass.
Aye.
And that's what they reckon if you get the long tail COVID. I know a
Mm.
few other people actually who have it as well. So and they're suffering badly with it. So
Aye.
touch wood, I haven't had it. I haven't been out the door anyway. So it's just
That's it.
and it's. Do you find then when you're sort of struggling with health issues? I always find this is that if your kind of mood is suffering, and then you get a physical ailment on top of it, it sort of just compounds it all down. You're just like, oh, my
Yeah.
head's fried, and now I don't feel well, and now my head's
Mhm.
even more fried because I don't feel well, and you kind of just start to spiral.
Aye.
It's really hard to pull yourself round out of that and trying to. And I suppose going for exercise is one thing that you can do to help, but you're probably not in the position that you're feeling even like energetic enough to do that.
Aye. It's not even that. I've always been a big girl and I would never make any bones about it. I'm on the larger side. But I've always been able, my size has never stopped me doing anything. I've always like, you know what I mean, I would go hiking with people and like walk the legs of myself and I would literally try anything and now I'm kelp walking up the stairs.
Oh God,
And it's really discouraging because I feel like I'm fitting a stereotype.
yeah,
Fat girl that can't do anything. But it's not me. It's not who I've always
mm,
been, and that part of it is really disheartening.
yeah.
Like over Christmas when my nephew was with me, he's like 6 foot odds and he's got big long legs, so every one of his steps is like 3 and 9. And he kept dragging me out for walks and like oh my god, it was killing me. Like we'd walk from like Bishop Street to Ebrington and back again. And on the way back, we'd go up Waterloo Street or whatever, and I would get to like the top of Waterloo Street and have to stop for a breath.
Yeah.
Actually, stop for a couple of breaths. It was
And
utterly killing
a
me, and
pint.
that's not who I am.
Uh,
You know what I mean? And it's just,
oh.
I think that's probably the worst part of it for me. Is that lack of stamina that I would have had before.
And has there been any improvement, or has it just been consistently that?
It's improved a wee bit over the last couple of months. I do have more energy to do stuff. I'm not spending as much time just flat out. You know what I mean? I was like on my bed all the time while I was off work. I just had no energy for anything. Now I can do things, but I'm sleeping the clock round. Like it's
Oh.
weird. And if I'm not sleeping the clock round, I've got intense insomnia. So
So,
it's
so you're
great,
one or the other. You're either not sleeping or sleeping.
pretty much. Aye, so it's kind of like flip a coin. What's it going to be today? Yay!
Well, I'm sorry to hear that. We haven't caught up in ages.
Mm,
And I had, we haven't seen each other since I suppose
mhm.
the last day, way back when I was planning doing this podcast. Way, way,
Okay.
way back. It was just after I think the first lockdown kind of started to come
Mm,
to ease up. And then we met. We met up for about a lunch, and we had a chat.
mhm.
And I was telling you I was wanting to do this podcast. I would love you to come on. And then obviously my daddy passed away, and everything just went out the window. All the
That's
plans
it.
and went out the window. And I just I didn't come back to it. It was only like this last couple of weeks when I really sort of felt like right, I can start putting my energy into this. But you know what? It's a lot of work. But it's brilliant. I'm loving it. It's so brilliant, and I'm
Aye.
learning. I'm learning so much with it. On that subject of I suppose of loss of just being sidetracked by grief and
Mhm.
all that. I mean, we obviously have to talk about Lyra and just about
Mm-hmm.
it's coming up now on her 2 year anniversary. As you know, I knew Lyra.
Mm-hmm.
We weren't good buddies, but we stayed in contact. And she was always a real networker. She loved had her network of people, and she loved kind of
Oh my
who
god,
forgot. And
so much.
she would message me on occasion, like, "Oh, I love the oyster fry, and it's cool, and keep it up, and it's great, and everything's brilliant, and stuff, whatever." And she'd message me and said, "Oh, here I'm moving to Derry. I've met somebody from Derry." I was like, "Oh, right, okay." So and so I was excited to kind of hear all about this. So
Mm.
I suppose I would love to hear about how you guys met first and foremost.
Oh well, I always describe it as just the most millennial thing ever. We met in a dating app, um, and
Was it Tinder?
I think no, it was Plenty of
Oh
Fish.
wow, that's classic.
Plenty of Fish. I know, classic, and also a wee bit kind of,
CD.
but yeah, well,
Why
it
why plenty of
has
fish?
been.
Was it like
I hated Tinder. I
right?
hated it. I downloaded it and just found it really weird, and I kept recommending me men, and I was like, no, no. I don't know what he's on his Facebook under. Um, but I do not. I'm not interested in Martin from Castle Derg.
Uh,
Thank you.
uh,
Um, and I tried all the other ones, but like there's a lot of dating apps out there and a lot of the sites and stuff. But some of them are very Belfast centric. Some of them are very Dublin centric. Derry's an absolute nightmare for dating. Like it's just a horrific place to meet anybody because everybody, especially in the lesbian community, everybody's been with everybody. So you don't, you know what I mean? How do you meet somebody that hasn't been with half your friends? You can't. It's so hard. You know what I mean? So that's kind of the thing that I find a wee bit iffy about it. Plenty of Fish seems to have a reasonably good mix.
I have done my fair share of online dating in my time, both on Plenty of Fish and on Tinder. But to me, Plenty of Fish seems like such a several years ago, like at least 10 years ago. So like New Lyra didn't meet that long ago, where I'm just like, oh right, Plenty of Fish. That's retro. It seems like, but I can totally get that. The transient nature of Tinder, where it's so judgmental. It's just like nope,
Oh
no,
my god, so
swipe, swipe,
judgmental.
swipe, 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 and you don't get any chance. Whereas I suppose something like Plenty of Fish, you get that opportunity to actually jump onto somebody, slide under their DMs with a bit of
Slide under their
banter.
DMs. Aye, and they'll also have something up about themselves. You know what I mean? Like Lyra's profile was fantastic. It was really well. It had like grammar,
Wow,
correct
really?
grammar, and like she was using apostrophes in the right places and things. It was amazing. And I was like, oh, this is interesting. This is quite a change. Quite a turn up for the books on here. And it was just interesting. She'd laid out who she was and what she was about. And like I found with Tinder, you don't have that. It's like
Yeah, no,
you
but
both like the Ulster Fry
yeah,
on Facebook,
yeah,
and that's the only thing you have in
yeah.
common.
It's
You know what I mean? It's
it's not even that interesting anymore. It's just like you both like coffee, and it's like
exactly.
would you like to send a super like you both like coffee? You're like, no, that's not.
No. Exactly. You know what I mean? It's that like I know that attraction is definitely a big thing, and initial attraction when you see somebody is huge.
Yeah,
But like I've met some people who I've been like, oh my god, you are absolutely ridiculously gorgeous, and then I've talked to them for 5 minutes, and I've been like,
uh,
you know what I mean? And that's I think the thing you have to kind of get a grip with a grip of somebody's wheelings and dealings, what they're under, what they like, if they can use the correct your, things like that matter.
these are the things that matter to you, whether you can use the right punctuation.
100%.
And you know what? I'm totally on board with that. At one point, I was working on a screenplay about online dating. I had such a rich and vast, diverse experience up in Belfast doing it. Ironically, when I was living in Belfast, when I knew Lyra,
Aye,
and then Channel 4 brought out a show that was very, very like the premise of the thing that I was wanting to do, and I
for
was like,
God's sake.
looking back, it was a fairly common thing. But I love the whole topic of online dating. I think it is
Mm-hmm.
such a rich and wonderful topic that you could delve into and spend hours talking about
100%.
the nuances of how people get on online and the things
Mm-hmm.
that they do. And but anyway, okay, I digress. I'm talking. I know.
Yeah. Oh, here, no, I'm 100% on board with you. Like, it's something that I really enjoy. The whole. I don't enjoy doing it. It's horrific. Dating is the worst thing ever, and I was so happy that I was never going to have to do it again. And now I'm like, at some point, I'm going to have to dip my toe back in that water, and I'm like, but it's so interesting.
Yeah.
And when you talk about people's experiences, oh my god,
It's I have had the most ridiculous experiences. I remember living in East Belfast, and I remember meeting a girl off Plenty of Fish randomly, right? So, and I was, now bear in mind, I was living in East Belfast. My name's Ciaran. Met up with her, and she was from East Belfast as well. Anyway, long story short, after several kind of what I would say fractious kind of exchanges where I was like raising my eyebrows, which is a massive feat for me, as you can tell, and she eventually said to me, she said, why do you keep talking about Derry? And I says, because I'm from Derry. And she was like, oh, but you're from East Belfast? And I was all, no. I have an apartment in East Belfast. I work in Belfast. I'm from Derry. And literally she's just like this, and then a penny dropped, and she said to me on a first date, oh my God, are you a Catholic? She says to me on the date. I was like, yes. And she's like, and it's just thinking, and I was all, is that a problem? And she was like, oh no, let's go to the bar and do shots.
oh my god.
That was.
I mean, to be fair, online dating in Northern Ireland has like a whole other layer of weird date than it would have anywhere else, I think.
I know, it's just, it does have a weird layer on top of it. But oh god, I could literally write a book on, and I have thought about it, on online dating.
Totally should do it.
You know,
You totally should.
You know what? I've had great experiences with it as well too, and so I can't. I've had good experiences with it. So, and that's just the world now as things stand. But look, on the subject of Lyra, you know, he's fell in love, and I, you know, was so delighted when Lyra told me she was moving to Derry. She had messaged me. I remember I was in Quayside, in the stupid pound shop in Quayside, getting some tat that I needed for, like, I can't remember, some batteries or some Tupperware tat that I needed, and she messaged me and was like, oh, and we were due to meet that day. She said, I can't meet today. Do you want to meet for next week? And so we put it off. And then the next week something happened, and something came up for me, and I put it off. And that was the last I spoke to her. And occasionally her message comes up every now and then. And I see it, and I see that last message where we didn't. And how are you now in terms of where you are with the grief process, and how do you feel you are with it? Do you even know?
Do you know what? It ebbs and it flows. Like, so last week I was a mess. Everything I watched, I was crying. Everything I listened to, I was crying. I just missed her. She was on a while out of my dreams, which doesn't often happen, but she was in a while out of my dreams, and in most of them she was being like a narc. Like, I had one dream where it was her and my mum, who never met. My mum died, 14 years before I met Lyra. And it was the both of them. They were flanking me, walking down a hill. And funnily enough, another podcast that I listened to, one of the podcasters was walking up the hill. And my mum, started shouting her name. And I was like, stop it, you're embarrassing me. And Lyra was cackling, that cackle she had when she really finds something funny. And my mum was just like going, Hannah. And I was like, stop it, you're embarrassing me. And I woke up and I was like, what the hell kind of a dream was that?
And it's unsettling when you have dreams like that, don't you? Know, when you, it is. I've had that too with, family members that have passed away, and it's a weird mix of, like, you're kind of somehow thankful that you kind of had that wee connection with them again in some sort of non-corporeal form, but at the same time it's really unsettling, and it can upset you, and it can set you back. And I've spoken about this, and I don't mean to sidetrack on one grief to the other, but I have I kind of have spoken about my dad and my sister passing away in short succession on a few occasions, and what I took from that was getting to kind of compare planned grief, i.e., grief that
Yeah.
we were like, right, my daddy's got dementia, he was getting really sick, he was falling all the
Hmm.
time, his faculties were failing, and we knew that he was going to pass, versus what happened with you, which was this traumatic, you know, you know, this was not on the plan. This was not on the script for us,
Yeah.
and that's what happened with my sister. Not to the same extent, obviously. You very very traumatic. So
No, but I mean,
it's that
it's one of
loss.
those things. It's a loss is a loss,
Mm,
and I don't think that I don't think it's right to say like that someone doesn't compare or whatever. It was just different,
mm,
but you still lost somebody you cared about in a way that you didn't expect to lose them in a time when you weren't expecting any of it. So, like for me, it's any kind of loss is awful. Like, and I've had planned losses in both my parents.
yeah. Oh, have you?
Um,
I didn't know that.
yeah. So my mum had lung cancer, and we
Oh,
knew pretty much from the beginning. Once we found out what type of lung cancer it was, me and my sister had the central library. We got all the books out. Obviously, 2005, Dr. Google wasn't as big a thing, but or 2004, but Dr. Google came into it, and the type of cancer she had only has a 5% survival rate past a year. Um, we didn't tell her that because I think a lot of the time, particularly in my mommy's generation, if you were told the word terminal, that was it. It was game over.
yeah,
You
yeah,
know, they stopped fighting, and I'm not saying it's not a fight, but they just lost any kind of will that they had to go on.
yeah,
Um, so we didn't tell her, and she everything that they threw at her, she went for hell for leather because she was determined. Um, and we had a year, almost to the day, to come to terms with the fact that our mommy was going to die. It still was hard, you know, and it was still one of the worst things I've ever gone through. But I did a lot of my grieving beforehand. And the same with my daddy when he was dying. He was in the hospital for 5 weeks before he died, and there was a lot of grieving done in that period because we knew that he was going to die. Um, and again, it's still hard, but the grief is very different to the grief that I felt over Lyra, if
yeah,
that makes sense.
yeah. I'm sure there's all different sort of variations on why
Mm.
you grieve, and I've been sort of, I suppose, kind of observing it now for a while, and not
Mm-hmm.
just with me, but with other people I've been close to and other members of my family. And from you can tell me if I'm wrong on this. I just had this kind of observation. This is uh, I have no empirical evidence on this, but
Aye.
I had this kind of thought that grief is like a reflection of your love for somebody.
Mhm.
It's like you're getting that bouncing back at you, but sometimes it's also a reflection of lost potential. So
Mhm.
if you didn't have a great relationship with someone, that you were, say a parent and I've known
Mhm.
people who've had not particularly good relationships with their parents who have passed, um, to the point that there wasn't even a relationship there, and they are devastated by it, and you realize that it's the loss of that potential for
Mhm.
that relationship. Either that or someone is completely awesome, as Lyra was, and then you've the loss of that potential plus the
Yeah.
reflection of how awesome they were. I don't know if that makes sense, but
Mhm.
that's kind
Yeah, no, it makes sense.
that's kind of the way that I approached grief. And I had this weird thought when my daddy passed, which was, this is how I want my daughter to feel when I die. Like, and I know that sounds really weird when I was like, I want my daughter to feel like my daddy was great, and and
Mm.
to have that same sense of, that she'd actually lost someone who was, for the right reasons, in that sense, that it was the loss of a love as opposed to the loss of a potential,
Aye.
and in that sense, the impact of someone's loss on your life is that reflection. I think I'm kind of rambling now, but you kind of see where I'm
No, I
going.
think you're 100% right. Like because I think with your parents, if you do have a good relationship with them and all the rest of it, and like I had a pretty good relationship with both my parents, um, the potential, you know that their potential is always going to become a day and end anyway, and you always know that there is an end period for your parents in your life, usually, unless you're unlucky enough to die first. Um, so you always know it, and it's one of those things that's horrible, and everybody thinks about it at some point, and it turns into like a childhood fear or whatever. So when it happens, it's a natural progression, it's a natural end.
Mm-hmm.
Um, But as you said, if you don't have that relationship with them, then you're always maybe thinking about rekindling the relationship, improving the relationship, and you lose that. And
Yeah.
that's nearly a harder loss than losing somebody who's always been there in your life and who's been a really strong figure,
Yeah.
because you don't know what could have been.
Yeah. I think that's what I was getting to. I have a friend in my life who lost their father and didn't have a particularly good relationship. And at the time, there hadn't been a relationship there for many, many, many years.
Uh,
And I remember it was only when my own father passed away and I had that experience where it kind of crystallized in my head. I was all, it's still, obviously it's a person's father, obviously that's always
mhm,
important, but it was understanding that it was the loss of that potential for, for that
mm,
relationship to be repaired and to maybe, blossom into something that wasn't there.
yeah.
So, but obviously with Lyra, Lyra was amazing. And I think
Mm,
you're amazing as well. I've told you that to your face,
fair
and
enough.
I just I now that I know you and I knew Lyra before,
Hmm.
I mourn for you as well because I can
Hmm.
I sort of think, God, I wish I could have hung out with you two guys as a couple,
Aye,
and
aye.
I suppose that's hard, to take, but I hope I'm not upsetting you saying that. I just
No, 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 you're grand. I know Lyra wanted the same thing, because like whenever she was moving down, she really wanted to connect to people in Derry, and I was like, right, well, who do you know? Who are you? What are you interested in? She was always interested in like the tech scene in Belfast and
yeah,
stuff. And obviously anybody who does anything to do with journalism and stuff. So she had mentioned yourself. She got in touch with Claire Allen.
yeah,
There was a couple of other people that she was sending messages off to, and she was like, "Oh, I know this person." I was like, "Oh, I know who that is."
mm.
She's like, "Do you know them?" And I was like, "No, but I know who they are."
Aye,
Like I knew who you were because I was on Pure Dairy
yeah.
forums years ago. Um,
Who were you in Pure Dairy
and
forums?
then I was Sarah Werewoo.
Oh, right, okay.
I was very sad. I didn't comment that often,
Uh,
but I loved reading it.
aye,
And having the crack, like, and then like, just all these wee things coming up. I was like, oh, I know who he is, and I was on message Claire Allen. Sure, she's a writer. You're a writer. You can talk about writery things. And I'm sure she had a few other people as well that were
yeah,
on her
yeah,
radar, like. So
yeah,
that was she was kind of thinking, I'm going to make my own dairy circle, because she had the people that I was friends with. But I mean, that's you still have to branch out on your own.
yeah. And she knew. It's funny when I first met Lyra, the very first time I met Lyra, it was Mary McKenna from Learning, no, who was one of the founders of Learning Pool, who
Aye.
since, and it was Mary introduced me to Lyra.
Okay.
They were in having a coffee in the Harlem Cafe on Bedford Street in
Okay.
Belfast. And I just was in there. I was having an hour meeting, and I was on past, and Mary was, oh, Ciaran, this is Lyra, and she introduced me, and then and she's like, what do you do? And I sat down and I was telling her about my business at the time, and that was
Mhm.
way before Ulster Fry, etc. And then I think she circuitously found out about Pure Dairy and all the rest of it. But I and like I say, I look back on that, as I say, and I see that message on occasion, and I just think,
Mhm.
God, it could have been so different, and we could have had that coffee, yeah, it's just that sliding doors moment where you just think, I wish we had a caught up, and wish we had that wee connection. Um, but um, but for all the reasons that we talked about, it didn't,
Mhm.
or we will talk about.
Aye.
Um, it's 2 years now. On, is it the ninth of April? Is it
18th.
18th? Oh, sorry, I'm not
Mm.
gonna lie. Sorry, I'm gonna say
No, no, don't worry.
18th.
Grand.
Um,
18th of April.
uh,
My brain keeps saying it's the 19th because it was like 11 o'clock, sort of just after 11 when it happened. Um, and obviously, by the time we went to the hospital and all the rest of it, it was just time wasn't a thing anymore. So my brain was all like, oh, it was the 19th. And then I was like, no, it was actually the 18th, Sarah. It's just everything stopped having any kind of meaning at that time. I think it was just waiting to hear
mm,
if she was going to be okay or not.
yeah. If you look back at the kind of outrage after that happened, it
Hmm.
seemed like it was a seminal moment in the whole, didn't it? It seemed like,
Yeah.
everybody was like, right, enough's enough now. Enough is enough. This is it.
Mhm.
How do you how do you reflect on that now, like from versus what the sort of the feeling was at the time versus how things eventually kind of where they are now?
I think that I've got a few different views on it, I suppose. I think at the minute, in this day and age, maybe people have much shorter memories. We live in an age of social media. We live in an age where somebody just paints up their persona and they paper over those cracks and people forget about them because they're doing something else now. You know what I mean? And that's kind of the thing that I saw with the people who murdered Lyra was um a couple of months later they were beating up some poor drug addicts under the flyover, and telling them don't be coming back around here, and people were going fair play to these for doing that. You're getting rid of them. They're a bad element and all this sort of stuff. And then they were organising food drives for the food bank and things like that. And things moved so quickly that it went from outrage to fair play boys. And what do you do with that?
I know. How do you reconcile that? I mean, I see that there is ongoing efforts from representatives in those groups doing other things around the city now, trying to engage with the community, etc., etc. It's a weird one, and I'll tell you why it's a weird one is because I actually know people who have been, I suppose, indoctrinated into those pillars of thought. I went to school with people whom I still have good kind of, I say, like where I could still go like, all right, what's a crack thing, and I know and they know that me and you ideologically are not on the same page, but when we think back to when we were maybe at school or things happened and we had that camaraderie years ago when we were thing, but I know and they know that me and you don't see the eye to eye on, and let's not have that conversation. But it always makes me think of the human element. Like you mentioned it, and you said that at the time about the fact that they are just indoctrinating these kids who are disenfranchised about
and you do have to humanize a Ciaran. You can't take their humanity away from them.
No, exactly.
You can take it away. I could quite happily take it away from the upper echelons, the people who are doing the indoctrination, who are sending young fellas out and young girls out to do their dirty work. And it's always been the way with these groups. It has always from day dot. It was always a young person that went out and got killed. You know what I mean? Most of the boys who blew themselves up setting bombs, or were killed by the police or the army were 17, 18, 19, 20 years of age. You know what I mean? You didn't hear too many of the older boys who were sitting plotting and deciding what they were doing.
Yeah. No, exactly.
You know what I mean?
And
it's the same now. We all know who the leadership are. They're all in their 40s and 50s and they're doing nothing.
A lot of these kids that's getting involved in that really probably think that they are doing something for that's going to help them or help their community or help some cause or gives them some sort of sense of purpose. And unfortunately, it doesn't. It doesn't add anything.
It doesn't. But I think a big part of it as well is, and I've heard about them preying on people with, say, intellectual disabilities and things like that too. These people maybe and it doesn't, not necessarily even just that. Maybe somebody who just doesn't fit in particularly well, who doesn't have a crew around them. And I think when you give somebody a sense of community, that's hard to beat.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think we've all been in a position where we've made friends with people and they haven't had your best interests at heart, but they're a group of friends. You have a bit of crack with them. You're going out, you're doing this, that, and the other. And I think that is a massive, massive driver for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
I also think there's more sinister elements underneath it, but I could probably be sued if I brought them up, so we won't.
It's something that I have been approaching several times on Pure Derry, to the point that the last time it happened, which was around the time I believe when John Hume passed, I just copied and pasted an article from 10 years ago and just reposted it. And it was just the same thing. It was just
nothing had changed.
Nothing had changed, and that's where, these kids coming through this who probably are new to this and think that they've got this new purpose, and they don't understand the futility of the fact that this is just this is just a cycle that just repeats and nothing changes,
Mm-hmm.
and there's never going to be any impact on a United Ireland by any of their actions. And if anything, we're now way closer to United Ireland on the account of just political manoeuvring that's happening.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm not an expert on these things, but it kind of seems we're
Mm-hmm.
pretty not far off now. So
Well, it seems like it's coming.
yeah,
But my fear with that as well is like the United Ireland that might be coming isn't the United Ireland they want.
exactly.
So what do we do in that instance when you have a United Ireland, which is the thing that they say that they're fighting for,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not a 32 county socialist Irish Republic,
Yeah.
because it's never going to be. That's not it's just not who we are as a society.
Yeah.
I understand socialism is fantastic in theory.
Yeah.
In practice, maybe not so much.
Okay.
We could definitely incorporate a lot more of it into our systems, but we're never going to have this ideal that the 1916 leaders came up with.
No.
And that's something that, like, what do we do then when you have the United Ireland, but they're still shooting police?
Yeah.
When we have United Ireland, but they're still kneecapping people?
Yeah.
What do we do? How do we get past that?
And does it go then that those who are of a Republican persuasion or an extremist Republican persuasion then just adopt the same policy as the Unionists? When things were bad here, when things were at their worst in Northern Ireland, where then Unionists and those who believe in the Union are getting persecuted, and exactly, and then it just becomes hypocrisy. And I've
Exactly.
tried to have that conversation, Sarah, with a few sort of people who are, Republican minded. And the thing is, I describe myself as an ideological Republican. I like the idea of Ireland being unified again, but the practicalities of it, the financial elements of it, and I suppose the structural side of it, and how you actually marry, the union, or those of a unionist persuasion back in. But the point being is that I've said to people that if there is going to be a United Ireland, in inverted commas, this tricolour that everybody's waving about, it's going to go.
It has to go. Has
Be a
to
new
go.
flag, be a new
Yeah,
national anthem.
100%. No way around it. We have to change it because if it's going to happen, it has to be inclusive.
Yeah.
But I know not last year, the year before last, so Pride 2019, Leo Varadkar was coming to Belfast Pride, and I got a message saying, "Oh, Leo Varadkar would like to meet with you." I was like, "Okay then, happy days." So I went and met. Most disingenuous man I've ever met in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Don't like him. He just has. I don't understand how he was a doctor. He's the kind of boy who would probably just tell you were dying of cancer with a straight face and not offer you any kind of sympathy. It's that kind of just way about him. He's just not nice. And he kind of just sat and he was quite rude, I felt.
Right.
Kind of sat with his legs crossed, kind of sitting, looking about him. And I'd kind of exhausted all the things that I kind of thought that he would have wanted to speak about. So I brought up about Brexit and about this, that, and the other. And I was like, a border poll is something that's coming. What preparations have your government put in place for it? And he was like, nothing.
Well.
I was like, what do you mean nothing? I was like, you do realise that Sinn Féin have their plan in motion and they are selling it to their people. And in the Republic, they don't know about Sinn Féin the way we know about Sinn Féin. They have very, very little experience of Sinn Féin in government and the promises that are rarely kept. And I was like, they're literally giving these people this idea that, we've planned it and this is a roadmap and na. I was like, it's never going to be Sinn Féin's idea. It's never going to be what they want. But equally, you need to do some planning because it's coming.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not prepared for it, you're going to be blindsided when it does.
Yeah.
It's going to be like Brexit all over again. And realistically, we don't need a repeat of that.
No.
You know what I mean?
No. On the subject of Leo Varadkar, and I want to segue into your glorious takedown of not only him, but Theresa May and Ciaran Bradley and all the rest of it. But on the day of Lyra's funeral, I was in the chapel in St. Anne's Cathedral, and it was a very, very surreal experience. But one of the weirdest and most surreal things is that I I had gone to a shop locally and bought a Captain America t-shirt because
Mhm.
someone had messaged me on the way up saying, you know that there's a theme for Lyra's funeral, um, and you know it's kind of we're going to do superheroes and different things in
Mhm.
Hogwarts and all this stuff. And so I had gone to a shop and bought a Captain America t-shirt with just the big shield here,
Aye.
and I had a jacket on, like a sports jacket thing, like a light grey thing. And I remember going to the toilet, and I was walking up through the back of the rectory at the back of chapel,
Mhm.
and I just caught and looked at the thing, and this person was standing there, and he was kind of real tall, whatever, and he was he smiled at me, and I was like smirked back at him. I know that thing when you see someone who you recognize, but they're famous, but you don't. You're like, how is that? And then you're like, oh, hold on. And it was Leo Varadkar. And I've always maintained, and I've told this story to people, that I've always maintained that he was checking me out.
Oh,
So
200%. I wouldn't doubt it at all.
because he was just he had that look in his eye, where he was all,
Yeah,
and I was like,
I like it.
we're at a funeral, we're at
I
a,
know.
and because he looked on the way back as well, yeah, and I was like, this is weird. I'm like, anyway, I don't
Oh,
know,
dude.
maybe I'm wrong, and because it was just this really inappropriate moment in the most surrealist circumstances, but your takedown at that time of not only him and his the things he'd said and his inability to kind of get on top of the situation, but also Theresa May and Ciaran Bradley. I mean, you basically told Ciaran Bradley that she was shit at her job.
I didn't give a fuck,
I know, and neither
honestly.
you should.
I was so angry.
I know, and you even said in I suppose in the correspondence that who was going to get onto you and say that you couldn't do that or couldn't say that.
That was it. And you see, if they had have, again, I wouldn't have cared. I would have actually lost my mind, I think.
Mm,
Because they were trying to kind of hurry us through. And I was like, oh, no, 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 no. You will not rush me on this one.
yeah,
I'm taking my fucking time.
yeah.
My sister was standing behind me going, Sarah, what are you doing? Sarah. And I was just like, no, no, no. She had no idea who anybody was. I think she recognized like one person. She just has no political knowledge at all. She doesn't care. Um, so I was like introducing her to people, and she was like, "Oh, hello, Simon." Um,
Was that Simon Coveney?
but Simon Coveney, who's
Yes.
the only person that didn't get. Well, him and Michael D. Higgins. Neither of them got the sharp end of my tongue.
Yeah. It's funny, I get introduced to the Simon Coveney. It was the mayor at the time, John Boyle.
Mm-hmm.
And I know John. John be a friend of mine. And John, I went over to have a word with him about something or seen him in the crowd. And I sort of scooched around to see him. And he introduced me to Simon Coveney. And he actually, to be fair, he was very affable and kind of spoke to me
Mm-hmm.
and all the rest of it. So he definitely seems to be a nicer dude than Leo Varadkar.
Yeah. I
So,
mean, he's still part of that party, so
yeah,
there's obviously something rotten in there, but
love him.
but he seems like a really nice person. I think he seems very good at his job. I think he's probably was much better suited to the role of Taoiseach than Leo,
Yeah.
personally. But what do I know about the politics in the Republic, really?
Well, I suppose that's something I wanted to chat to you about because I thought that your that takedown, your sort of dismantling of not only the Northern Ireland's sort of the impasse that we find ourselves at in Northern Ireland, the political situation with Theresa May not giving backing from the London government and having this sort of wishy-washy, mealy-mouthed approach,
Mm-hmm.
as you said on the thing. It's like, I thought it was glorious. I was sitting as I'm going, this is amazing. This is the best I've seen anybody from Derry speak to anybody on any sort of political stuff. And it was kind of, I suppose, backed up then by Fowler McGill when he did
Mm-hmm.
that speech where he was said, why in the what was the exact phrase away?
Why, for the love of God,
Why in the love of
did I
God?
take
I take a
the
death.
death of a 29-year-old woman in the prime of her life? Was it?
Yeah, and that reaction, like I remember being in the room and going, and I couldn't see, I couldn't see the reactions because I was behind on the other side, but I can remember looking up at the front and like they were the last to stand. That those front couple of rows were the last to stand. I remember coming home and seeing it on the TV that night, and it was just in all amidst all that sadness and awfulness for Lyra that we were all feeling, and that's that awfulness. there was that almost a sense of justification for like, we got to watch like a load of politicians squirm in their seat. They were all,
That's it.
and then they all get up and like clapped.
But how often do you see all of them squirming at the same time?
Aye.
But I mean, there's people have said to me, various people that were sitting over at that side and stuff, and they've talked about that moment
Mm-hmm.
and about like if you think about it, was like Leo and Arlene were like the last to stand, and Theresa May, they were kind of like, and people have turned around to me and said, "Do you know who was one of the first to stand out of that lot? Gregory Campbell.
Was he right enough?
Got on his feet faster than the rest of them." And I thought, well, that's interesting. It's kind of cool because I think
I
you know
I always wonder if
maybe it's just a Derry thing.
Gregory has done his usual foot in the mouth situation recently with
Yeah, songs of praise and
songs of praise and black singers and all that sort of stuff, and then he actually met. I was surprised that he actually met with people locally, from that community to talk to them. I don't know if they ever backed down on anything, but I mean that must have been an awkward conversation to be involved in.
aye. From what I read, like he didn't back down, but they said that they came away with with the realization that he didn't actually have any recognition of racism.
Yeah,
Like they were like he just isn't aware.
he's completely ignorant. He's complete. I mean,
Aye.
and that is unfortunately, and I talk about this all the time. The concept of ignorance. When you say to someone you're ignorant, they take it as an offense because they go, "I'm not ignorant," and you're like, "It's not. I'm not offending you, and it's not a criticism. It's an observation that
You're unaware.
you are unaware of a topic, and we've all been unaware of topics on several occasions. I've been open to the fact that I've been ignorant in my life, about everything, because especially when you're a kid, you look back when you're a kid and go, I didn't understand gay rights. I didn't understand, any sort of inclusion or diversity when you were younger, growing up in a white, working class housing estate, all Catholics, and of course, you no integration with anybody of color or of any, and anybody you did know that come out as gay. Then it was years later.
My year at school at St Cecilia's, I would have got called a lesbian quite often. I think I just have a big lesbian looking head on me, to be fair, because I had a boyfriend. Like I always had a boyfriend. I was no. I definitely don't like girls. I'm not interested in girls. The other girls in my year that have since come out as gay always had boyfriends as well. You know what I mean? And it wasn't until years down the line, whenever we kind of had all moved away and things like that we all started coming out because you didn't want to be other.
Yeah.
Being other was the worst possible thing you could be. And I know that's still the same now, but we're more accepting. And to be other now is so far removed from what it would have been then.
Yeah.
In the late 90s, early 90s, everything was other. You know what I mean? If you were a goth, you were completely other, and you might have had the lining bit out of you for that.
Anything alternative was seen as almost. Yeah, it's so true, and but I think we have come a long way in in a short space of time. At least on the surface, we've come a long way in a short space of time. I think there's still a lot of people who pay these things lip service and try and say things. You always get that impression when anybody from the DUP speaks about diversity. It's just like they're just reading it off a a piece of paper that someone handed them. It's completely disingenuous. And and you can even see the fact that like Arlene Foster won't properly criticize Gregory Campbell for his stance, which is essentially then just endorsing it. I don't know why we get onto a segue down a rabbit hole about talking about Gregory Campbell, but I have been very critical of Gregory Campbell to the point that he must think I hate his guts. And I don't hate his guts. I'd actually love to talk to Gregory Campbell on this podcast because, but I do have a huge problem with a lot of the things he said. With not only about members of gay community, the black community, but obviously members of the Catholic nationalist community, where he's been. He's so sectarian and bigoted, and he doesn't. I don't think he realizes it. I don't think he does.
I know that's the thing. I actually really don't know if he does realize it, and to me, I think there's something really sad about that because most of us got to a stage. I mean, I know growing up, like I grew up near the Bogside practically, and growing up it was up the Ra. you know what I mean? Fuck the RUC, fuck the army, blah 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 blah. And you get to a certain age when you can critically think and you evaluate the things that you're seeing on a daily basis and the things that you're hearing and the things that you think. And I mean, for me, I think my big awakening to the fact that things were a bit messed up here, which I mean, you would be surprised that it wasn't just from birth, but was probably when Stephen Restrick was murdered. You know, he was a young soldier,
Yeah.
and I think he was only like 19, something like that.
Yeah.
And I was like, he's not that much older than me.
Yeah.
What the hell's going on? No, that's not to say that I wasn't aware. Obviously, I knew about Bloody Sunday and all the other horrific things that have happened in Northern Ireland where all our people were killed. But I think it was something that happened that I was alive for, that I saw what happened around it. And I think for me, that was my eye opening, that actually all this stuff that I've been thinking for years and been saying for years is not the way it should be, and it's not right.
Yeah. You've just.
And it made me examine, things a bit more.
Yeah, absolutely. I grew up in Rosemount in this literally in the shadow of the huge big watch
The big army tower
the big
thing.
watchtower, and on the gable wall of a house a few doors up was the message, "Don't shoot me, I'm a Brit." When one of the soldiers who came out of the enclosure, or came out of the barracks one night, got shot by someone from the IRA. Or no, it was they shot one of their own. That's what it was, wasn't it? There was a
Right.
That's what it was. Actually, they shot it. It was in an alley. They were thinking, and they shot one of their own
Oh,
soldiers,
Jesus.
not realizing, in a kind of I suppose what was they call it? What the Americans call it? That sort of
Friendly fire.
friendly fire. And someone painted up on the wall, "Don't shoot me, I'm a Brit." And I remember looking at that and thinking, this is fucking madness. And people were like, selling, like it was some sort of thing. You're like, people are dying. I seen that from an early age, Sarah. I seen that. I had that realization that I'm just born here. If I had been born in England, I could have been, if I had that mindset of being nationalist, that, and I mean properly nationalist in the sense that just whatever country I'm born from, I'm proud to be from that country. So from that point, when you start abstracting it and start going, it's actually pretty fucking pointless. I consider myself really privileged, and I love being Irish. I love being Irish, but the whole idea of being proud to be Irish and being and having, which I get as obviously, but it's this notion that I didn't have any say in being Irish. I
No
didn't have
saying
any
it. It was
say in
just
being
an
Catholic.
accident of birth.
Yeah, it's just an accident of birth. So the construct of national identity for me has never really been that important as it does for a lot of people. And unfortunately, that's a really hard concept to get across to people that are tribal or just want to see things in really simple colors like green and orange.
It is true. I mean, I was looking at a graphic today that was up on Twitter, and the guy had just tweeted the union's in trouble, and it was a graphic of England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, and it was like how many people in these areas call themselves British.
Yeah.
So Northern Ireland, of course, was entirely purple, nearly apart from like Derry and Armagh, and maybe like a wee bit of Belfast. So that was purple was like the 75% or more, and we were purple as anything. And then there was a wee tiny bit of purple in London, and a wee teeny tiny dot of purple somewhere in like the top of the Midlands, and then everything else was Scottish, Welsh, English.
Yeah.
We invest far too much of our time arguing about people saying you can't identify as Northern Irish. It's like, who are you to tell people that what they can and can't identify as? If they identify as Northern Irish, then fair play to them.
Yeah, exactly. You can't dictate that to people. And anybody who tries to force that or shove it down your throat is wrong. And I suppose it's kind of like, I always get the whole idea with the Derry Londonderry thing. People know the idea when people talk about Derry Londonderry, and the worst thing. And I've written articles on this. There actually was one of the most popular articles we did on the Ulster Fry was "Don't You Mean Londonderry?" One's best joke at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival. Because it was this kind of sarcastic quip when anybody, and it was anybody, regardless of which way, he says, "Don't you mean Derry? Don't you mean Londonderry?"
Yeah.
And anybody who corrects somebody is wrong. I
Oh,
always
it's the
think
worst.
it's the worst thing ever.
The
And
worst.
even if you have your own belief, where I go, well, I call it
Mm-hmm.
Derry. All my family call it Derry. Everybody I know calls it
Mm-hmm.
Derry. Even Protestants from Derry I know call it Derry. And I know that, and I'm okay with that, and I'm cool with it. But if you want to call it Londonderry, if that's important to you, fill your boots.
Well on.
Well on,
Uh-huh.
good. And likewise, if it's inverted the other way,
Mm-hmm.
if somebody wants to call it Derry and someone is, oh, do you mean Londonderry? I just honestly I find it so.
It's it's every Facebook comment section
oh,
on every story about this city.
oh,
Every single one, and it will literally rage on. And you can look at the people who are doing it, and they're adults.
yeah.
It's not even like
It's the
teenagers or something. It's
same.
grown
It's the
adults.
same comments, the same argument, the same thing, and you see it in that for Derry Londonderry. You see it on their posts about James McLean. You see
Mm-hmm.
it on their posts about anything, and you're just like, wait, I've been looking at this conversation, at this argument, since I've been
Forever.
a kid. Like, when are we going to move
Mm-hmm.
past this? When are we?
I know.
When are we going to start? And that's where I suppose I just when you were speaking around, unfortunately, around the most traumatic and sad time of your life, I just thought you were fucking brilliant. I was like, wow, like here is our next fucking first minister. Why don't we give? Honestly, you were so
No.
but. That on a serious note, I just thought you were so well spoken. I thought you had such
Mhm.
a take on politics. And is that something? Have you ever been approached by anybody about going into politics?
I have. I've had a couple of conversations with people about it. My problem is I'm really politically homeless.
Right.
Um, there are no parties in the north that I fully align with, and I know you can't fully align with anybody. Nobody's ever going to suit you unless you set up your own political party. But like, I'm not a shinner.
Yeah.
Never have been. SDLP very wishy washy on a lot of things. I think their youth that are coming up now are fantastic, and I think in a couple of years' time, maybe whenever the old guard are out of it a wee bit,
Mm-hmm. And somebody like Alliance saying you wouldn't be the sort of middle ground then option doesn't appeal to you either, obviously.
I always voted Alliance, but for personal reasons, I will never vote them again.
I have been asked that question on a number of occasions. Would you go into
Mhm.
politics? And I think it's an assumption that people go to, and I've just made it on your behalf, and other people have made it on mine
Mhm.
when they go, "Oh, well, you're in the public eye, you're doing stuff, you say things, you occasionally have opinions and stuff. Would you go into politics?" And I think me and you, like, for all the reasons you just said about, you could set up
Mhm.
your own political party. I see it in the next sense that if you create a political party, it's a party in your image, in your ethos, in your beliefs,
Yeah.
in your ideologies, and then it's not going to suit everybody else. And the whole,
No,
I
that's it.
I kind of look at it and just think, well, the whole party political system by de facto is kind of broken because you can't create a political party that's going to suit everybody's needs. You're
That's
just
it.
not going to be able to do it. So you're always just trying to find favor with a
Mhm.
demographic, and then what ends up happening, as we know, when you get the kind of the populist element into it, is that
Yeah.
political parties start to move their opinion based on what's popular, not on
Yeah.
trying to use their influence to tell people, guys, here's the way we should do. We're going to advocate for
Yeah.
this, and here's why we're going to explain these things. They're not standing up and saying, guys, this is the right thing to do because X,
Yeah.
Y, Z. It's just like, oh, right, you think that's popular? Well, is that what he's like? Right, that's what we like as well,
That'll
then.
get us votes.
Yeah.
That'll increase our prop. Like I think a prime example would be if you think about Mike Nesbitt, like 5 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
he stood up and said, "If we vote against same-sex marriage and we keep on this track, we're going to be on the wrong side of history."
Mm-hmm.
Then he voted against it himself. Stood up, he said this to other unionists, and then voted against it anyway because he knew that isn't the way. It wasn't the way to win the hearts and minds of the people who were voting for him at the time.
Yeah.
Now Mike is like he's at Belfast Pride every year.
Yeah.
He's turned into a proper ally, and it's that thing. Like sometimes it's a case of the populist motion, and sometimes it's a case of growth.
Yeah.
And I think for me, like if I can say that's growth, and I can see this person has mellowed and they've taken the time to go and learn about things, and like the UUP have been pretty good about that. I think I've been quite impressed with them because they have sent members to Pride to speak, and they've put them on panels, and they've kind of come out and said, "I didn't know this, and now I do, and I'm sorry for being foolish about it in the past." And that to me, I think is great, but that if you just like flip on a dime because you see more people in favor of a certain thing, and then you try to backtrack that, your previous lack of support wasn't really a thing. We always supported it.
Hmm.
That annoys me.
Well,
You kind of have to own who you are and own that you're learning lessons and own that
yeah.
change happens, but sometimes it's slow.
Yeah, I would love you to go into politics, but I don't want to do it myself. Do that sort of way.
I,
Like I'll be like, "Go on, you do it, Sarah," and I'll throw you a few
no,
ideas, and and you kind of want other people to step up and say, right, you know what, we're going to take this on. But I look
I,
at it and I just see, as much as I think people like me and you would go into politics with all the greatest enthusiasm and passion and will in the world to make change. That we're going to stand up and we're going to go, right, we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And then 5 years later, someone's going to go, well, you didn't do that, and you didn't do that. You're a lying bastard. And you're like,
I,
well, I actually wanted to do it, but I got beat down by
exactly.
this, I got beat whatever. So
How do you
I don't know.
actually do it?
That's what puts me off politics, and I don't. And it's a hard one to have a conversation because I have a lot of time for a lot of local politicians that I know are trying really hard,
Mm-hmm.
and fair play to those who are doing that. And I was delighted to be able
Uh,
to give Emma McCann a wee bit of a shout out on Pure Derry the other day because he had his ideology. Here's what I believe.
mm-hmm.
Here's what I think we should be doing, and he never deviated from it. He
No,
just
he's
had
never flip
his.
flop.
He's never flip flopped. He's not a populist politician. He had his ideology. He believed in it, and regardless of where you agree with him or not, that is to be respected. Because there's so many that'll just go, all right, like you say, they'll flip flop back and forth.
Aye.
Uh,
And it is that thing. Like he's always had the same platform. He's never changed. I was discussing this with my friends the other night, and they were saying the same thing. Like he hasn't ever changed. He's always been on his trajectory, and I mean he's been successful to a degree.
he has,
He's obviously very successful here as a commentator. He's very well respected. Um, but if you look at the political side of things, I think that that's probably one of the reasons that PvP as a whole haven't progressed massively because they are very strict in their policies and they're not going to flip flop,
yeah,
which isn't a bad thing. Like
yeah,
I wish more parties were a bit more like that, had a bit more about them. They just stick to their views.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. But like we've been talking about politics now for ages.
I know, Jesus Christ.
I keep saying we're a way to. I don't know how many times I've said a way down the
I
rabbit
know.
hole. Not only on this podcast, but on all the other ones. I think it's my favorite phrase of the Pure Dairy Talks is going down the rabbit hole. Have you tried anything? Have you been doing anything? Any meditation or mindfulness or anything?
Honestly, no.
No.
I had a really bad period of time. Not last summer, the summer before. I was taking panic attacks that felt like heart attacks, and they were really long lasting, and it would have been like maybe a full night of flashbacks to that night and going over and over and over, just like tiny details of it. It would have been like just one moment
Mm,
in the hospital or one moment standing in Creggan or one moment, and it just would replay and
of
replay
course.
and replay, and the chest pain would just be like crushing. And I remember, um, like I tried everything. I was taking anti-anxiety stuff, all the rest of it, nothing was helping with it. So I started doing breathing exercises, just like guided breathing exercises.
Same sort of thing.
Um, and they were phenomenal. Like
Yeah.
it was the only thing that got me through
Yeah.
because
Right.
everything else I tried was useless.
We've talked about this. I think what you talked about is trauma you have suffered.
Hmm.
That's post traumatic stress.
Yeah, yeah,
You
and
know.
it is like it's probably one of the most common disorders that people in Northern Ireland suffer from
Mm,
because it's so deep rooted in us. There's so many different layers and types of trauma. You have trauma that's your own, trauma that you've experienced yourself firsthand, but you also have intergenerational trauma that's handed down from your family. Stuff that they've experienced, which has impacted them, and then it impacts you.
yeah.
So like it's one of those things that I think Northern Ireland just isn't equipped yet to deal with the layers of trauma that we have to work through.
Mm-hmm.
And it's something that one of my friends has PTSD as well. Um, and we were talking about the fact that just the services aren't there to help people.
No.
So this is going to be an ongoing problem unless people can do as you've done and take it into your own hands and learn coping mechanisms, which a lot of people don't. And I think that's why we've ended up with the drug problems we've ended up with. Um, and things like the low educational attainment and things like that. That it all plays in.
Of course it does. Of course it does.
You
There is a beautiful quote by Russell Brand, who is someone who I admire as a thinker and as a speaker. And he says that that cannabis isn't the gateway drug. Trauma is. Trauma is the cause of so much disturbance in people's lives, whether it's anxiety, depression, all those sort of things, and trying to address those. There's I suppose kind of I can see this happening in my friends and family group and people that I know that are resorting to medication before they would even consider going. What are you doing? Oh, you're focusing on your breathing, or you're changing your eating, or you're doing this, and like there seems to be like a kind of a barrier here. There's a lot of people here like, what? Fucking meditating?
We haven't normalized it in our society. If you look at America, everybody has a therapist.
Yeah.
They're going to therapy for XYZ. Here it's not normal.
Yeah.
If you're going to a therapist, like, what's wrong with me? How bad are you? Like, are you mental? Are you going to end up a grancha kind of thing? Where it's immediately sort of seen as like the worst possible scenario for people, opening up about your feelings and being real about what's going on with you. And I've done therapy. I got a great counsellor through Wave.
Very good. I know Wave Trauma.
Wave are fantastic. They're such like a great resource for people.
Yeah.
And they've been amazing throughout this whole process. And I really can't fault them. They've really helped me so much, and they've helped my family, and they've helped my friends as well, which has just been so helpful. But it was hard for me as well because I wouldn't say that I'm like that, open it, or I think it's weird or anything. I think it's great, but I find it really difficult to open up.
Yeah.
And I find it really difficult to let myself go and show emotions and stuff like that. So I've always been like that. I've always been like I won't cry until I'm on my own kind of thing.
Yeah. Where I suppose there's I had this conversation yesterday with my niece who last summer lost her partner, her mum, and her granda in the space of 2 months. And we went out for a walk. I know it's like out of all the stories in my family, hers breaks my fucking heart the most. And she's so strong. Brutal, absolutely brutal. And her partner, he took his own life. And then my daddy died, and then her mum passed away 4 weeks later. And like me and her talked about the process of either accepting grief, like there's that kind of thing that people talk about don't be don't be pushing your grief away. Don't be ignoring it. Don't be putting it in the box and all the rest of it. But I was trying to say to her that, look, if you're going over and over and over something and you can't do anything about it, and it's not something that you can change or you can actively make. If you've gone over this thought a million times and it's not going to change anything, it's okay to push it out of your mind. Push that out of the way. It's okay to push it out of your mind, because, and that again, that's the process of mindfulness, when you're like, this thought process isn't actually adding anything to my life. Off you go. And that's okay. That's different from, that's not saying that you're not going to grieve. If you have a different thought, or you're like, what, I haven't dealt with this part of my grief, then it's okay to sit and process that, and you're not disrespecting anybody's grief by just out that process. But if you are, as I say, if it's something you've done and you're just torturing yourself with that thought, then you can learn to push it away, and that's okay.
That's it. To death, you push it out. But equally, I think sometimes whenever it's pushing back in, and it's pushing back in, you have to let it in.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
You don't have to let it in constantly, but you need to let it in, because there's a reason that it's coming back to you and back to you and back to you. And that's the thing that I found, because there was things and I was trying to push the images away. I was trying to, like, I don't want to relive that. I don't want to do that again. I've done it to death. I can't cope with it anymore, but it just kept coming back.
Yeah.
So I learned, instead of continuously pushing it away, to accept it,
right,
let it go through, and then push it away once it's gone through, instead of trying, because what I found was when it's pushing its way back in and you're stopping it, it'll just keep restarting and restarting and restarting. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's been my feeling, or a thing that I've experienced with it. But I think because I am so bad at expressing my emotions and the things that I feel, um, it's not even that I'm bad at it. I'm good at it whenever I see when I get into a flow, I can be great at it. But I'm wary of it. I hate it.
Yeah,
I don't like that feeling of powerlessness that it gives me when I'm talking about the things that are affecting me the most. Um, but it gets to a stage where it's like, do you know what? This can't define the rest of my life.
yeah,
Um, and I need to be able to miss Lyra and love Lyra, but move my life forward.
yeah,
And it's difficult because you meet people who maybe haven't seen you since it happened, or you haven't seen, since very early on in the process, and it tends to drag you back a wee bit. You know what I mean? It opens up old wounds a wee bit like that. And sometimes you nearly prefer to avoid people. You
yeah,
know what I mean? Keep away from people that you haven't seen for a while, so you don't have to do that, because every day you move on a wee bit, and I don't mean like you move on from them. You just move on in your life. The place where I was in April 2019 isn't the place I'm in now. In so many ways, like, so many things in my life have massively changed. Um, and I think a part of the maybe I'm trying to think what way to word this. It's almost like a pro of all of the trauma that I've been through, and a pro of the awfulness of the situation, the awfulness of losing Lyra and the circumstances and all the rest of it, as I'm now a lot more open to just saying goodbye to things.
mm-hmm.
Where before I would probably cling on until my nails were bloody to situations that maybe weren't the best for me, or people who weren't the best for me. Now I'm just like, you know what, it's fine.
Yeah.
Bye.
Well, I mean, I don't know if have you ever heard of Mo Gadat?
No.
He wrote a book called Solve for Happy. He's a genius Google engineer, and he lost his
Okay.
son. He had everything. He had riches, wealth. He was a multi millionaire. He had 18 cars in his driveway. He had all his stuff, and he was miserably depressed. The loss of his son has transformed him, and he has come through that and created a part of his personality and a part of his character, and a part of it's propelled his growth as a person,
Hmm.
that he can't get away from the fact that he has to just acknowledge that my growth as an individual has been propelled so far forward by
Hmm.
the death of my son, and I feel that with loss that I've had. I
Hmm.
feel that it's propelled me forward, and you must feel that in the same way. And I kind of almost think that these things, grief and loss and breakups and all these things, they're like scout badges. They're like they're like you get them and you earn them, and if nobody's been through that, they can't
Aye.
they can't reconcile it. And you either deal with it positively, i.e., you say, I'm going to take this and I'm going to move forward and I'm going to change that energy into something that's really proactive and positive, and
Aye.
try and make something of my life and pay tribute to that person. Or I'm just going to mope about it for the rest of my life,
Aye.
and nobody wants to be in the latter category.
No, that's it. It's like when you're playing a video game and your XP's going up as things happen. It's kind of the same. Um, but I think the only thing that I can do with it, I have to do something positive with it, because it was the most negative experience.
Of
It was the
course.
worst possible thing, and I lost the most amazing. So many of us lost the most amazing
I
person.
know.
Lyra was so many things to so many people.
I know.
But she was such a positive force. And she was just like such a wee ray of sunshine. You
She
know what I
was.
mean? Pain in the arse sometimes, but you know, um, and like the conversations that I get to have with people who knew her in a different capacity to me are just fantastic. And like at the minute, one of her best friends is making a documentary about her.
Yeah.
So throughout that, being involved in that's been really positive, and it's also given me more insights on the other aspects of Lyra that I wasn't present for, or never knew, which has been fantastic. So she's always going to be there, and I think something positive has to come out of all the negativity.
Yeah.
That's the only way forward. You can wallow in the negativity,
Mhm.
um, or you can do something.
Yeah.
And I think doing something is the better option, because this country has wallowed in negativity for long enough.
I know.
You know what I mean?
And as
So why continue?
you just had the nail on the head. You can, and I've said this before. You have to choose positivity. It's a choice. It's not it's not a destination. You don't arrive at it suddenly. You have to actively go, I'm going to be positive. I'm going to choose to be the positive person.
And you might not be there every day of the week.
No, you don't be every, and you
But
don't.
you know what? If you get 5 out of 7, you're doing bloody well.
Exactly. Sometimes 4 out of 7, you're doing well.
Sometimes.
And you have that where you get up on a Monday morning, you're right, I'm going to be doing the thing, and then maybe the next day you slump, and then you just got to get back on the horse. It's kind of like rehab. It's an ongoing. You say like, you don't give yourself a hard time. You don't. You just go, right. Today was a bad day. Tomorrow I pick myself up and I start again. And you've got totally the right attitude. Because for all the reasons I said when I was singing your praises earlier, is that you can pay tribute to Lyra by making yourself something of your own life and using your talents and your skills. When I seen you speaking at Lyra's death, I was like, that's a special person. And would we necessarily have heard from you had it not been for that? And don't ever feel that you can't own that and make the most of it.
Well, that's it. As I've said before, like I was given, this was thrust upon me. I never wanted it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's just never been something that I really desired. I mean, everybody has their, your fantasies about being like a Hollywood star or something like that there, but like it's a fantasy and you don't actually want it to come true. And this is so far removed from that. Yeah. It's ridiculous,
I know it's.
But I'm using what I've been given as much as I can, and I'll continue to do that for as long as I can.
I'm glad to hear it. Obviously, the law has changed since Lyra's passed. For gay marriage. And that is something that we've been talking. It has been discussed that her name should go alongside it. What do you think she would make of all that now? Would you be married? You'd be married?
Oh, we'd be married. Like she wouldn't even have waited. Like it just would have been like we're getting married ASAP as soon as the law changed. I think she'd be really pleased. It's been a long time coming. And I know one of her best friends, William, had said to me about this day that they went to the first equal marriage march, and she turned around and she was like, he turned around and he said like, oh, next time we won't need one of these because you'll be married, and then she was like, oh no, I don't see it happening, kind of thing. And now she would be, the option would have been there, and she'd have been delighted. We already had our list of people made out before I was even asked. We knew who was and was not coming to our wedding.
Yeah.
We'd scoped out venues and everything. She hadn't even asked me.
I remember I've seen the thing where she planning to do the proposal in New York and stuff.
Do you know what? It was like pretty perfect, to be fair. She'd scoped it all out, even though she had ruined the whole surprise because she showed me a picture of the ring.
She spoiled it for you.
Spoiled it completely. We came back from Slumming World. It was only probably a week or 2 weeks before she died. We came back from Slumming World and she was like, I've been keeping this secret all day and I can't cope with it anymore. And I was like, what is it? And she was like, this. And she showed me the picture of it and I was like, Lyra, what the hell? I was like, you can't do it now in New York. You have to do it somewhere else. You need to plan it again. And she was like, I was like, no, it's okay. You can do it wherever you want to do it. It's fine.
Oh God. Well, look, it's those are the memories that you'll cherish forever. And if you do find yourself back on Plenty of Fish or Tinder.
Oh God, no. I wonder, can you still do it the old-fashioned way? Is that still a thing? Can you still meet people? No, not anymore. But
not at the minute, isn't it? Unfortunately, it's hard. It's hard to meet people now at the minute, which is not only just physically, but even hypothetically, it's hard to even have our conversation, which is part of the reason we're doing this.
That's it.
on this way, and we'll just leave it I suppose on a positive note, as when you get back to the world, what is going to be? Where's going to be the first place you go when the world opens up again? Where are you going for your munch? Where's your munch? Where's your first munch?
I'm not even thinking about food. I'm thinking about Mullaghmore. I want to. I'm driving my ass down to Sligo and I'm walking the beach in Mullaghmore.
That's a great answer.
Don't even care about anything else. That's my special place. That's my heaven. So
Mullaghmore. I've never been. I must check it out.
Oh Jesus, most beautiful place in the world. I
really?
love it.
Right. Okay. It's on the list.
Definitely do it. It's only like 10 minutes past Bundoran.
It's been really brilliant catching up with you, and we have, I suppose, circuitously approached the whole topic of not only the tragedy of what happened in Creggan 2 years ago, with as the anniversary approaches on the 18th of April, but we have talked at length about grief and the grieving process, and I hope that you continue to find growth and happiness and contentment on your journey. And if you ever need anybody to speak to, I'm here for you to talk. Because I genuinely I'm really delighted to know you, and I think, and yeah, I know that it's sometimes nice to have a buddy to talk to about these things that don't.
Somebody that's been there, somebody that knows the crack.
Totally. Yeah. So, and I know Lyra would be really proud of you. And you're right, she was a wee live wire.
She was. She never. We girl had more energy than 10 me's.
We're long overdue now. A proper catch up with.
I know.
Why shave my head as well? Will we have a skinhead party? Me and you'll just
bleach it white as well.
Peroxide blonde. Is that what you did? You bleached it as well?
That's what I did. I bleached it today because I did bleach it before and I wanted it purple. I'd been planning this for ages and I couldn't do it for months upon months because of the documentary, because we needed continuity and scenes and stuff. And as soon as it was over in October, I was like, yes. And then I took really sick and I just was like, no. So I did a purple and it ended up not purple. It was more, there actually is still a bit of a red tinge to it. It needs another bleach. Well,
it's lovely.
It's only hair.
It suits you exactly. It grows back. At least you have. I mean, mine's is disappearing rapidly. So I could definitely be joining you.
There's always a wee trip to Turkey, Ciaran.
Somebody else is that actually Mickey has. I can exclusively reveal that Mickey Doherty has agreed to come on to the podcast. So and you know what? It's the usual Derry thing where like I have so many people who've agreed to do it, but everybody's sliding scale is like nobody. Like if you say to somebody Derry about, can I put you in the calendar in the diary? About what? A diary? Yeah, but no, they're just like give me a shout next week. No, everybody just wants it. It's all gives a shout next week. There is just this loose, flexible scale where I've honestly have about 10 people.
Derry time was not the same as normal time.
Well, listen, look after yourself. Stay in touch, and I hope you continue to find your happiness in the world.
Okay, perfect.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Well, hope you enjoyed that. Thanks for listening if you're still here and made it this far. Just to let you know that this will be the last week that we upload the entire video to Facebook. It's not normally the done thing that you put the entire episodes of a podcast on Facebook, but of course that's where our biggest audience is, and I have been delighted to share the experience with you guys. But I would love for you now to jump over and subscribe on the various platforms that we're on, which is effectively all of them. So I am a personal favorite with Spotify, but we're also on Apple Podcasts and all the other places you can listen. And if you want to watch the full episode, you still can do on YouTube. So go to YouTube and search Pure Derry Talks, and you'll find our YouTube channel as well. So we still will be posting some stuff on Facebook, obviously, all the promo content, all the teasers, all the various bits and pieces that we need. So you'll still see stuff, but it won't be the entire episode. So I hope you will stay with us for the experience. And next week we will be talking to the one, the only Mark Patterson. He is someone who has interviewed and talked to me many times, and who I am really looking forward to, I suppose, turning the tables on, and getting to be the person driving that conversation. Tune in next week, next Sunday night again, for Pure Derry Talks. Thanks, folks. Speak soon.